So what are the most critical transitions that one needs to make as they approach retirement? Well, if you're not sure if you're missing the most critical, then stay tuned to this week's episode of the Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income. Welcome to Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income. I'm David Scranton, here with my good friend and co-host, Sarah Samuels. And today, we're addressing all those important critical transitions that one needs to make as they approach retirement. And by the way, don't worry, if you haven't made them already and you're recently retired, it's not too late. And we're especially going to explore those critical transitions that can really derail one's retirement if they're not made.
Yeah, and Dave, it's so great to be here with you, of course, and with all of our listeners this weekend as we talk about these transition phases. And there are several different transitions you need to make. And on a recent show, we actually we talked about how this is sort of like the stoplight, right? Where you make that decision. Do you hit the gas? Do you hit the brakes? And what's the right move to make? But really, Dave, first, how was your 4th of July weekend?
Well, thank you for asking. It was nice. It was nice. We were up north, up in Connecticut, and the weather's beautiful this time of year, and family was over, and everybody went to the beach, and I'm not a beach fan, so they kind of ditched me at the house, but that's all right.
Yeah, Dave, you're from Connecticut. You live in South Florida, but you're not a beach fan. That's hard to believe.
I know. Go imagine. How about you? How was your 4th of July?
It was really nice. We went up to see my mom and dad and my family, so it was nice kind of getting out the house for a little while and going up there to Jacksonville, where it was a little bit cooler, so the weather was great, and it was always good to spend time with family.
Of course. Fireworks, eat some marshmallows.
Yeah, all that good stuff. Of course, that family stuff, and I hope everyone out there, of course, had a wonderful 4th of July weekend with your family and friends.
Of course. And speaking of fireworks are good on 4th of July, but fireworks are something that you really don't want, metaphorically speaking, when you're in retirement. And we always talk in the show about the most critical transition that people need to make as they're approaching retirement, ideally 10 years before retirement. But again, don't fret. If you haven't made those and you're a couple years from retirement, or maybe you actually retired 2-3 years ago, it's not too late to make that transition now. And of course, Sarah, what we're talking about is my favorite equation. Isn't that correct?
Right. That's the TR equals I plus G, also known as the How to Make Your Millions Last formula. But really, Dave, it's total return equals income plus growth.
That's right. And the reason it's so important is because when you're young and you're in your accumulation years, you want to make return on your money. All you care about is total return. You don't care if it comes from the G, the growth component, capital appreciation, or whether it comes from the I, interest or dividends. You want to make money on your money. But when you retire, it's a different story. You give up that paycheck. And so for 40 years, maybe more of your life, you've gone to work, gotten a paycheck. You're able to go ahead and save some, pay some expenses, maybe save some more and spend the rest with a clear conscience. But that ends when you retire. And all of a sudden, that focusing on the I when it comes to your investments is that most critical transition. And Sarah, that's why today I want to talk so much about that critical transition, why it's a little bit more difficult sometimes for some people to make that transition, and why it's a little more difficult sometimes from an investment standpoint for advisors to invest for the I versus total return focused.
Yeah. And sometimes I think the best way to do that, Dave, is to hear directly from our listeners and our YouTube viewers out there. So we're starting off our first Ask Dave question here. We have Patty from Tennessee. She says, we want to buy a second home when we retire, but should we invest for income and take a mortgage out? So can you do both? Can you have your cake and eat it too, Dave?
Yeah, so Patty, maybe. The answer is maybe. But you see, that's a lump sum purchase, and maybe for that purpose you don't want to invest for the I. It really depends. So, for example, if you have non-IRA money that you could take out tax efficiently to pay cash for a home, I'm always a fan of paying cash. I think that's better. But let's say all of your money is 401k money or IRA money, where if you took it out, you'd have a big tax payment. Then maybe in your case, you're going to have to go ahead and take a mortgage and just take withdrawals from the IRA in order to make those monthly payments. And that's okay. But again, that's a situation where you may not want to invest some of your money for the I. But Patty, here's the bottom line. You have to ask yourself, what's this money here for? Is most of your money here because you don't ever plan to touch it? You just want to leave a huge legacy? Is that your primary driving goal? Or is most of your money there because you want to make a lump sum purchase? Or is most of your money there to generate income to replace your paycheck? And Patty, if you're like most, the majority of your retirement money is probably there to generate income to replace your paycheck. So mentally, you need to carve off the portion that might go for a second home. Again, if you're in a tax situation where you could buy it in a lump sum, right? And for that money, you still need to be total return focused. But for the majority of your money that you're relying on to generate income to replace your paycheck, that's where you have to focus more on the I and not the total return component. We talk about being purpose-based versus performance-based. Performance is when you're looking at growth at all costs. Purpose-based is when you say, okay, what is the purpose of this money? And I need to invest one pool of money different from the other. And Patty, in this case, the house money might be invested differently from the rest of it.
Yep. And a lot of times this process can start with laying out your goals and figuring out what your goals are, just like Patty did, figuring out that they do want to buy a second home and retirement. So if you have a question out there, if you have a comment or you have a concern, something you want to ask Dave, please send us an email at askdave@retirementincomesource. That's SOURCE.com. And thank you again for spending your weekend right here with us on the Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income. I'm Sarah Samuels, and I'm here with Dave Scranton as we analyze the different transitions that you're going to have to make in retirement and the ways that you can make these transitions most comfortably, whether it's from your money, whether it's really your mindset, whatever it is. There's a lot of transitions that you have to be prepared for. So one of those things, Dave, is this concept that you mentioned of, investing maybe just some of your money for total return purposes and just some of it for income. So is that a possibility for people that are in retirement? Should they just invest a little bit of it or a piece of it for income and then still maybe take their chances if they have the right risk tolerance?
Again, Sarah, it depends upon their purpose, right? This is an example where somebody wanted to buy a second home, but most of the time people have already bought their second homes and they retire. Maybe they want to downsize. And when you ask them that question, what do you plan to do with the majority of this money? You're never ever going to touch it. You're going to leave just a huge legacy for your family. Is that your driving goal? Or are you going to take a chunk and cash it out and buy it, make a lump sum purchase? Or is it there for income? Most people say income. So it's your purpose and your personal goals that should drive that decision. But here's the funny thing. You've never had to invest for income before until this stage, right? All your investing has been lump sum, right? So you're focused on total return because even college isn't an income goal because most of the time you're not taking money out of your IRAs or 401ks, and you haven't saved enough in college funds to pay for college off interest and dividends. So even that's a lump sum goal. It's just broken up into 4 lump sums in 4 consecutive years. So most of your goals as you're in your accumulation years are lump sum based. And that's why people get so conditioned toward total return thinking, irrespective of whether it comes from the I, the interest and dividends, or the G, the growth. But in retirement, it's the first time you actually have to plan for taking that lump sum and generating income without touching the lump sum. Because, if you retire and you try to spend down your principal and cross your fingers and toes and hope it grows back, then you might get lucky, right? It depends on when you retire. If somebody has that goal, Sarah, and they retired in 1980, they probably would have done fine because 1980s and 90s were the best stock market we've ever seen. But if they did that in the year 2000 and retired, they'd be out of luck. They might actually be out of money right now because the market had a downturn in the early years of retirement. So that's why we say the only safe way to generate income in retirement is to live off the I, the income. But the question is, why is it more difficult to invest for the I than the G? And why do some people have a difficult time making that mindset, that paradigm shift from being total return focused to I focused? All that and more coming up. I'm David Scranton here with Sarah Samuels, and this is the Retirement Income Source, where it is all about the income.
Welcome back to the Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income. I'm Sarah Samuels, and I'm here with Dave Scranton, and we're talking about the big transitions that happen, especially as you enter retirement, of course, during retirement. And the biggest transition is the total return mindset transition, of course, where we talk about the total return formula, which is income plus growth, and this mindset transition from just worrying about the total return and hoping that your portfolio is growing to really focusing on income. Now, a lot of advisors out there, a lot of our listeners might be thinking, well, Dave, I've gone to my advisor at one of the big institutions, and he's a great retirement planner, and I think I'm good to go. This can lead to something that Dave cautions against, which we like to call engineering income. So, Dave, can you explain the difference here, really, and why a lot of advisors do this thing, engineering income, and why it's different from income generation?
Well, engineering income is a something that really started in the stock market of the 80s and 90s, the best stock market in U.S. history, where people started to realize I can withdraw a certain amount from my portfolio every year safely, because when I back test it over time, most of the time it grows back. I'm not going to run out of money. So that's where we got that famous 4% cash flow rule that we talked about a while ago in a show just maybe a couple months ago, where it said that if you have $1 million, you can safely withdraw from principal $40,000 a year. It'll grow back, and there's probably a 90% chance you'll never run out of money. And that's called engineering income. You're not really generating income, interest, and dividends. You're engineering it. And what are the benefits? The benefits are that if you're in a bull market like the 80s and 90s, you take your 4%, you'll die with a much greater pot at the end of the rainbow with more money for your family. The problem is if you do this starting in the year 2000, by 2012, you've spent down half your money because it didn't grow back. So the problem with this is that 90%, right? If there's a 90% chance you won't run out of money, it means there's a 10% chance you will. Okay. Now imagine getting on my airplane with me, Sarah, and me saying, "Hey, we're gonna fly somewhere, and there's a 90% chance that we won't crash. We'll land safely."
Nope, not good, Dave. I need 100% chance.
100%.
Okay, 99% chance, because there could be a crazy act of God, something happens. But yes, 99% chance.
Yeah, because here's the thing. When you're talking chances, it's not about the probability. It's also about, if that negative probability does happen, how bad of an impact it has on you. And in this case, if it's financial, if it's death in the case of the airplane, or financial death in the case of running out of money, that's a problem. In fact, I would bet that if any of our listeners came to me, Sarah, and said, "Hey, I want to become your client," and I said, "Great, no problem. I've got the paperwork here. But before you sign the paperwork, I just want to let you know there's a 10% chance you're going to run out of money if you work with me." Somehow, not only do I think I'm not having clients, but I don't think I'd have any listeners yet.
Yeah, and strangely, Dave, I don't think the financial advisors out there, I don't think they're focusing on that 10% problem, right? It's glossing over.
It's the glass half full part. That's right. And the reality, though, is when you live off the interest and dividends, it's like a renewable resource, so you never, ever have to worry about running out of money. So that's the only real safe way is to get income, is to not engineer it. It's to live off the to live off those interest and dividends, to live off that renewable resource.
And it can get difficult, too, if you're just starting to really pay attention to those statements now that you're looking for the income and trying to figure out what that is. It can be difficult to figure it out. So that's actually what our next Ask Dave question covers. We have Brandon, and Brandon is in South Carolina. He says, "How do I know if my advisor is engineering income versus actually generating it from my investments?"
Brandon, good question, and I would encourage you to find out. So the first thing you do is you take a look at your statement, and a lot of statements have a column that says income or estimated annual income, and you can look at that column. Now, some advisors who are not income-based will take that column off the statement. They'll go to their clearinghouse, whether they're through one of the big wirehouses or whether they're through a Fidelity or Schwab. They'll go to the clearinghouse, say, "Can you please take that column off?" And why? Because it doesn't reflect positively on what they're doing, because they're not investing for income, right? But if you do have that column, that'll give you a good estimate of it. Also, on the top of your statement, on the front page, if you're looking at it right now, you might have May's statement, or maybe even the end of June statement might be in the mail already here or in your email. And it'll say, year-to-date income. And if you see that, you can extrapolate that over, from 5 months to 12 months or 6 months to 12 months and figure out how much it is. And are the checks that your advisor is sending you more than that or less than that? If you can't figure it out or you're not 100% sure, then give your advisor a call and say, "How much am I earning in interest and dividends from this account?" And by the way, Brandon, after you ask that question, you have to say, well, again, and how much is the fee you're charging me? Because remember, that fee comes out of the income. So if you're getting $25,000 of income in your portfolio, but there's a $10,000 fee, the net income that you can take safely without touching principal is $15,000. Okay, so Whatever it is, whether you figure it out in the statement or you call your advisor, I encourage you to take that step right away. As soon as the show ends, take a look or make that phone call, because if you're taking anything out of principal, then you either want to consider lowering what you're taking, or if not, making that shift from being total return focused to income focused. It's possible your advisor is equipped to do that, but it's also possible that your advisor is a G advisor, a growth advisor, and cannot.
Yep. And there are income specialists out there, Brandon. So there are people that can help you with this phase of the retirement game. And thank you for sending in your question to Dave. And if anyone out there has a question that you want to ask Dave, maybe you want your question to be featured on the show because you think it could help other listeners out there, all you have to do is shoot us an email at askdave@Retirement Income Source. That's SOURCE.com. And we appreciate you spending some time here on your weekend listening to us right here on the Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income. I'm Sarah Samuels, and I'm here with Dave Scranton, and we're talking about the transitions that you make as you head towards retirement, and of course, once you're in retirement, starting with that all-important transition from focusing on the total return and the growth and kind of just looking at your money as this nice thing that's growing for you, as opposed to income, whereas you're making your money work for you. So a lot of advisors out there have issues with this, and that's because a lot of advisors, they're retirement planners. And I love that, Dave. Planners versus retirement strategy, right? Like what sounds better? To me, a plan sounds like something, they've got a few plans out there. They're just kind of throwing them out there and say, hey, here's what we think you should do. Doesn't sound very specialized for me, versus a strategy sounds more dynamic, right? And it sounds more personalized.
Yeah. And really, there's only one strategy that makes sense in retirement if you're getting income, and that's getting the income from that renewable resource, getting it from the I in that TR equals I plus G equation, right? Getting it from the income and not the G and not the growth. So, in fact, even the word, when you talk about the word plan, the word retirement plan typically means, when you hear the word plan, it means that there somehow, some way, either a retirement planner is trying to get you to retirement and make sure you have enough money, or they're going to spend down different buckets of money, different amounts of principal at various points in retirement. And you need a plan so you don't run out of money. But let me ask you, if you're just living off the interest and dividends, you're never touching the principal, do you even need a plan?
No, I don't need a plan. And, think of it like you got a bunch of chickens, right, Dave? We'll go back to the chicken and the egg theory, right? If you have a bunch of hens that are laying eggs every day, you really don't need a plan in a way, right? Because you know that your hens are good and they're laying eggs. Versus if you're planning to cook those chickens for, every day to figure it out, you need a plan, or else you're going to run out of chickens and you're not going to have any dinner. So it's different. It's a whole different mindset. Again, another huge transition that you need to really think about heading into retirement.
That's right. The eggs are essentially a renewable resource, right? Because you get more and more as time goes on. And, think about it, even whenever you're using a finite resource, you're heating your home. You don't have to worry about that down here in Southern Florida, Sarah, but a lot of our listeners do, right?
Yeah.
You got to worry about, okay, do I have enough oil in my tank? Do I have enough wood to last me through the winter? No matter how you're heating your home, there's always that issue. It's a finite resource. But if you're heating it with solar, you're heating it with wind, you don't have to worry about it, right? You can crank the temperature up because there's going to be more the next day. And the same is true when it comes to retirement. Living off the I and not touching the principal. But it's an important paradigm shift to make. And it's a tough paradigm shift for some people to make. And it's also a little bit more difficult to invest for the I, which people don't know. You see, most of people's lives, they're used to mutual funds, right? You put money in your 401k, got a bunch of mutual funds. And mutual funds traditionally are not good I investments. They're good G investments. So when that becomes the tool that you're most used to, by definition, most people, as they finish up their accumulation years, go into the income years, they really don't know how to invest for the I. It's a whole new way of doing things.
And that's just one of the reasons that most of the financial advisors out there have a problem making this transition leading up to retirement versus getting through retirement. And we're going to talk about some of the other reasons why in just a few minutes.
I'm David Scranton here with Sarah Samuels, and this is the Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income.
Welcome back to the Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income. I'm Sarah Samuels, and I'm here with Dave Scranton. And our show today has been chock full of information about these transitions, the most important transitions that you have to make as you're approaching retirement or even once you get to retirement. So we've talked a little bit about the most important shift, right, which is going from focusing on total return to focusing more on income. Dave, you also talked about the idea of engineering income and why that is so different from actually generating income. And what you're really doing is spending down your principal, which could cause you big problems in the long run. But really, the biggest transition of all is really the transition that investors have to make, right? Because they're the best stewards of their money. But so many of them seem to really have trouble with this. And why do you think that is, Dave?
I think it's the earliest experiences shape our paradigms. You know, in one of my books I wrote this story, which many of you have heard, I'm sure, about how a little girl goes to her mother and says, "Mommy, you know, why do we cut the ends off the roast before we put the roast in the pan?" And the mother says, "Well, I don't know, sweetie, but we're going to see Grandma this weekend. You could ask Grandma why." And that's how we did it when I was growing up. So this weekend, weekend comes, they go to see Grandma, and the granddaughter goes, "Grandma, you know, why is it you cut the ends off the roast before you put it in the pan?" And she says, "Oh, sweetie, we don't do that anymore. I haven't done that for years. We used to do that because back when your mommy was your age, the roasting pan was only this big, and we had to cut the ends off to fit it in." So you see, that's a great parable about how sometimes our earliest experiences shape our paradigms. We call it primacy, right? So in the investment world, and whether it makes sense or not, right? So in the investment world, if you started investing in the 80s and 90s because you're approaching retirement, putting money in the 401k, your paradigm quickly became, I take more risk. And if I take more risk, I get more return. So every time you took more risk, you were getting rewarded for it. So I think that's one of the biggest reasons why people struggle, investors struggle in making the shift, because it's a new concept and because the primacy issue. Their first experiences where that risk is good and gets them more total return. But you know, Sarah, there's also recency, right? Think about it. We had the stock market drop during the financial crisis, and then with all the money that the Federal Reserve flooded into our economy, printing money, quantitative easing and everything, really caused the stock market from 2009 through the end of 2021 to go up. And I know we had a hiccup at the beginning of the pandemic, but again, with more flooding of money, even we recovered from that quickly. So that recency paradigm is where a lot of investors look and say, oh, well, if the market's going up now, it's going to continue to go up. If the market goes down, it's going to continue to go down. And recently, they've had a really good experience investing for growth, for total return. So I think those are two of the big psychological reasons why investors struggle. One is that primacy issue, and one's recency.
Yep. And I think part of the reason too, Dave, could really be the education out there. Like you mentioned, a lot of the financial advisors that are out there doing this right now that are helping with retirement planning were also raised in the 80s and 90s. That's what they kind of grew up on, if you will, and that was their first experience. So they're not as educated as some of the other income specialists.
True.
So our next Ask Dave question actually has to do with this. So this is Cameron from Nevada. Cameron says, "I talked to my advisor about income and investing for income, but he said that people are living longer, so I really need to be focusing on growth in my portfolio. Who's right?"
Well, Cameron, great question. And of course, Cameron, the answer is I'm right because it's my radio show, right? So
Cameron must have been listening to your episode about the questions you need to ask your financial advisor.
So here's the issue. He's right that you need to get growth if you live longer. But where he's wrong is he's thinking it's either growth or income. He's thinking it's a choice. And see, what he probably doesn't realize, Cameron, is that it's not either or. You can get both and. You can get more income and still get growth. How do you do that? Well, if you're going to be in the financial markets, in the stock market, as opposed to growth stocks, you go to a higher dividend value approach. You can get dividends, we get dividends in our portfolios up to 5% on the eye, with still a lot of growth potential. And using some of those strategies, I'll tell you personally, we were able to beat the markets when the markets were going up in 2020 and 2021. And we actually made money in 2022 when the markets were down nearly 20%. So making that transition doesn't mean you black and white shut off all the G and go 100% to the I. It means that you take an I first approach. So instead of a total return or growth approach, ignoring everything else, scorched earth, you're saying, I'm going to look at an income-focused growth second approach. So he's right that you need growth as you live longer, but you can get that growth with more income. Now, Cameron, if you're conservative and you want to be in the universe of bonds and bond-like instruments, instead of in high dividend stocks, that's okay, because now you can even earn a little bit more income than you can in the high dividend stocks. In which case, you just don't spend it all. You reinvest some of those dividends and interest, and that helps you grow your money organically, the old-fashioned way, that reinvestment of interest and dividends.
Yep. And this, Dave, like so many other transitions, if you really take a look at this 10 to 15 years out from retirement, then you can take this transition slow. It's not just turning off the growth faucet and turning on the income faucet.
Right.
So, Cameron, thank you so much for sending in your Ask Dave question. And if any of our other listeners or our YouTube viewers have a burning question that you really need Dave to answer about your retirement, you can reach out. All you have to do is send us an email at askdave@Retirement Income Source. That's SOURCE.com. And you're listening to the Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income. I'm Sarah Samuels, and I'm here with Dave Scranton as we cover all the different transitions that you really need to be thinking about and the transitions you need to make as you approach retirement. So we've talked about the mindset transition of focusing less on total return and now focusing on income. We've talked about the concept of making sure that you are actually generating income as opposed to engineering income. But still, a lot of investors, they have trouble with this transition. You know, they're breaking a pattern that they've set for the last 40 years.
It's an addiction ways.
Yeah, it is, Dave.
It's like, you know, people know they should stop smoking, but it's hard if you smoke for 40 years. If you drink too much, that's an addiction, right? Some people love the thrill of gambling, going to the casino, right? And some people love the addiction of having a big year. You know, you make a 30% return in a year and your net worth goes up. That feels pretty good. And you remember that. You remember that win. You remember that addiction. And that's what makes it difficult for some people to break that. But I think when people realize, like we just talked to Cameron about, that you can actually stay in the stock market, still get some upside potential, but still get more maybe, just maybe, that's what people need to hear to motivate themselves to break that addiction, because they're not giving up that thrill. You know, they're just doing it in a different way.
Yeah. And that 30% increase, it feels great, but you know would feel pretty bad, Dave? A 30% decrease.
I know.
And really, that's what you run the risk of, and that's one of the biggest issues, and why you really need to make this transition, especially as you're heading into retirement.
Yeah, and we're all taught that. I was taught this, you're taught this, our listeners are taught this, advisors are taught this, that if you want to get more return, you have to take more what?
Risk. You have to risk it all, right? And
that is one way to get more return, but there are other ways to get more return without taking more risk. So again, it's just it's what makes that paradigm shift a little bit difficult for some people. And you know, it's funny because men are worse than this at women. You know, women are very practical. We mentioned at the beginning being purpose-based. Women are very purpose-based, right? They want to retire. They want to make sure they don't run out of money. They want to make sure they're okay medically. They want to make sure that they don't, you don't become a bag lady. You're not homeless, right?
Right, of course.
Whereas men look at investing sometimes as a contact
game to
sport.
Win, right? Yeah.
It's a game
the game
to
of
win,
life.
Right? But what I encourage men to think of is, hey, you know, if you're up by 3 touchdowns, there's 2 minutes left in the game. What are you doing? You trying to score another touchdown? Well, maybe not. If you do, and you throw an interception, guess what? You might only be up by 2 touchdowns. And then you do it again, it might be up by 1. So there comes a point in a sporting event, gentlemen, where you have enough points to win the game of life. And it's not so much about offense at that point. It's more about defense. It's about hanging onto the ball and running out the clock. So if you've gotten to the point where you know that you have enough income coming in from your investments, or you potentially can convert your investments to income and generate enough income to live the retirement that you want, then it's time to start considering defense. And that's where a lot of people a lot of gentlemen, Sarah, do-it-yourselfers, who love racking up that score because they love the adrenaline of it, testosterone, right? You know, they realize that, hey, you know what? Maybe I'm a good offensive coordinator, and maybe I just got promoted to head coach, But guess what? If that's the case, my first hire I need to make is to hire a good defensive coordinator to help me, because that's not how my mind is wired.
Yep. And it's all about having the right people on your team. So we're going to continue talking about ways you can make sure you have the right people on your retirement strategy team coming up. I'm Sarah Samuels here with Dave Scranton, and you're listening to the Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income.
And welcome back to the Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income. I'm David Scranton here with Sarah Samuels. And today we're talking about the single most important transition that you need to make in preparation for retirement. But don't worry, if you haven't made it yet and you're retired, then it's just important you do it as soon as possible. And that's making that transition from being total return focused to being income focused with your investments. And as we just told Cameron, that it doesn't mean you need to give up growth in your portfolio. It just means that you need to go from a total return focus, not paying any attention to whether it comes from the I or the G, from the income or growth component, instead to an income first, growth second mindset. And Sarah, I think that's a great way to say it. Income first, growth second.
That's right, Dave, because you're not fully giving up on growth entirely. You're not making a 100% switch to income, but you really need to be focused on that number, because the income is really what's replacing that paycheck that you were used to getting from your workforce. And now that you're retired, that's really where you're going to need the money, right? Like you asked me, I think it was maybe it was a little bit earlier in the show about you can't buy something using your investments, right?
Using
like you
growth,
can't,
right.
Using growth, like what the money that your house has made, that doesn't mean anything to you until you sell the house, and then you hope you actually realize that growth and you have that money, which is based on a lot of luck and timing, kind of like the withdrawal method. And
the problem is, unfortunately, we talked about how a lot of do-it-yourselfers struggle making that transition because they're kind of addicted to the excitement of the growth, or it's their earliest paradigm, investing for growth and total return, not paying attention to income. But how about advisors? Well, I think there are a few things that are trading. First of all, financial advisors struggle from the same affliction. Advisors are getting older. We go to conferences. A lot of advisors are older than me today, and I'm 57. So they got involved in the 80s and 90s, the best stock market in U.S. history. So their paradigm is growth also. It's all about stocks, because every time they took more risk on behalf of a client, the client made more money and the client was happy with them. But, I think it's more than that, Sarah. It's that, think about it. If I set you up in a laddered portfolio of government bonds, right? No default risk. They don't need any active management. Are you going to want to pay me a high management fee each and every year on a portfolio that's that safe, that doesn't require any active management?
Well, no, because I'm going to wonder why I'm paying such a high fee if you're not doing a whole lot of work on my portfolio.
That's right. And so I think there is a little bit of a darker side there, and that darker side is that most advisors know that in order that they can charge higher fees if they have clients in things that are a little bit more volatile, that need more active management. And as a result, I would say that our whole industry has gotten caught in this whole paradigm about growth. So think about brokerage firms for a minute. Their advisors work primarily on a commission basis. Some don't now, some are on a fee basis, but historically they've worked on a commission basis. So they're held to a suitability standard. They don't have to make the best recommendation for somebody. They've got to make a suitable recommendation. So if that brokerage firm has two things they could recommend, one that's great for the profitability of the firm and okay for the client, versus one that's great for the client and okay for the firm, it's okay if they make the recommendation that's great for the firm's bottom line, even if not for the client. Because remember, the CEO of any major publicly traded company, their number one fiduciary responsibility is to the shareholder. How do they do that? By maximizing corporate profits and therefore maximizing stock price. So you may think your advisor, your broker, is working in your best interest, but really oftentimes that broker has a fiduciary responsibility to the shareholder, not so much to you as a client.
Yep. And even if you are working with a fiduciary, you have to still do your homework, as our next question here from Susan out in Georgia. This is for our Ask Dave question. Now, Susan says, my advisor is a fiduciary, so I think I can still stay with him for my retirement planning.
I think that's great because, first of all, the first step is I believe you should be working with a fiduciary. There's a lot of non-fiduciaries that do a great job, but a fiduciary legally is supposed to put your interest first. They're supposed to do what they believe is the best thing for you. And I don't know if you've seen any of those Ken Fisher commercials, Sarah, I know you have, where they say, oh, we're fiduciaries. We make money when you make money. Well, that's one definition of a fiduciary. But technically, a fiduciary is supposed to do what he or she believes is best for that client. So at least that gives you as a client some confidence that hopefully you and your advisor are sitting on the same side of the table. But here's where you have to be careful. It's legal to be a fiduciary, but still be very limited in what you do. So for example, Sarah, as you know, a lot of fiduciaries out there will have maybe 5 or 6 or 7 different portfolios that they offer. And they're functioning as a fiduciary, and they're charging a fee for that asset management, as fiduciaries do. But ultimately, their job is to ask you a bunch of questions about your risk tolerance level and find out whether portfolios 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 are appropriate for you. So although they're legally acting as a fiduciary, what they're really doing is they're trying to figure out which of these 7 portfolios they should be selling you or putting you in order to do what they believe is in your best interest.
Yeah. Well, pretty simply, Dave, all income specialists are fiduciaries, but not all fiduciaries. They should be, ideally, but not all fiduciaries are necessarily income specialists, and they don't mean the same thing. So they're different things. So don't get that confused. It's good. Work with a fiduciary, again, someone that has to put you first above profitability, but it doesn't mean you're working with an income specialist. So Susan, thank you so much for sending in that Ask Dave question. And if you have a question or a comment or something you'd like to even say about the show, all you have to do is shoot us an email at askdave@retirementincomesource.com. And thank you for spending your weekend here with us on the Retirement Income Source as we're talking about the most important transition, the TR transition, that total return focus, moving that focus away from total return to income, and plus the transitioning of maybe looking at a different advisor as you move up to retirement, and then, of course, once you get into retirement, and why that's so important, too. And plus, the confusion, as some people have, I think, with all of the terms, Dave, all the financial terms out there, suitability standard, fiduciary, income specialist, people might think that all of these things are exactly the same thing, and they're not. They're very different.
No, and I think it's an important point we just made, too, with our last guest, that it was you could work as a fiduciary legally, you can charge a fee, but it doesn't mean you're custom making portfolios. It could mean that you're just saying, okay, we've got 5 or 6 portfolios, and by you giving me answers to certain questions, I'm going to fit you into one of those portfolios. Well, is that really the best thing that you could do for them, or is the best thing that you can do for them of the options you happen to have? So sometimes even, the first step is making sure you're working with a fiduciary, but then you have to take it a step further, because that alone doesn't mean that you're working with an income specialist or someone who's going to customize or tailor-make solutions for you, for your needs, for your goals.
Yep. It's kind of like you go to a carpenter, Dave, and you say, you know what, I want you to make me a custom piece of furniture here. I want you to build this, this dining table. Here's my ideas. And the carpenter holds up a hammer and says, okay, what is that? And he said, well, this is what I'm going to use. This is my only tool I've got here is this hammer to make your dining table. I don't think it's going to go so well.
Yeah, and you see people too, you look at home builds, let's say, where they say it's custom, but really you have 5 model homes, right? And you have to pick one, but then you can kind of customize it inside, but really you're picking one.
Well, you can customize it from the options they give you, right? So is that really customizable, or again, fitting you into a box? Right,
of course. And the other thing too, I think it's important, Sarah, for our listeners to know, is that there's a lot of people in our industry that are hybrid, that are they're licensed as a fiduciary, but they also have a Series 7, so they're commissionable on the brokerage side. So they're not fiduciary only, and sometimes the problem with that, it's okay, but the problem with that is the lines are blurred between when somebody's working in a fiduciary capacity versus when somebody's working a suitability standard and getting a commission. So I think it's important for you to ask your advisor, okay, I know you're a fiduciary, but are you a fiduciary all the time or some of the time? And if not, how about our relationship? What you have me in, is that done on a fiduciary basis or not? Because, the general rule is if it's a commission-based transaction, it's a suitability standard. And if you're paying a fee, as those Ken Fisher commercials say, right, then we make money when you make money. And that at least falls under the legal definition of fiduciary.
Yeah. Yep. Dave, do you think that most people out there, most investors, and the people that are listening to our show every week, do you think that they should stick with their current advisor, the person that helped them all these years, or should they really make that transition to an income specialist?
Well, it depends on how good your advisor is. So I can't speak to everyone. I love loyalty. Your advisor's done a great job. I think that's great. But yeah, there are times you have to make a change. I tell the story in one of my books all the time about how I was 20 years old and I love my pediatricians, Dr. Becker and Dr. Glass, and I'm going to the pediatrician still. Finally, they had to pull me aside and they say, Dave, you're getting a little old. You got to get a primary care doctor. It doesn't mean that I liked my pediatricians any worse. It just means I outgrew the pediatrician. And sometimes, Sarah, people do outgrow their financial advisor because they've morphed into a different stage of life in which that financial advisor is not the most suitable.
Yep, and life is all about transitions, and so retirement will be too. And if you enjoyed this show, if you want to share this show with your friends or family, we would love it if you did that. All you have to do is go to our radio website. It's retirementincomesourceradioshow.com.
Yes, we'd love it if you do that, but most importantly, we'd love it if you join us again next week. I'm David Scranton here with Sarah Samuels, and this is the Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income.